I was transmitting when I started the workshop. Thank you very much for joining. There is a lot to get through this afternoon. I can see people coming in and joining the workshop, joining this session, but I will get started so we don't waste a minute. Okay, so my name is Matthew Stibber. I am founder and CEO at Articulate Marketing, and today we're going to be talking about breakthrough strategies for thought leadership, SEO, and AI. My email address is on this slide, Matthew@Articulate Marketing. Sadly, for reasons, there is no live chat today. However, you are very welcome to email me at that address. I'd love to hear from you. Feedback, good, bad, questions, comments. And of course, if you need our help, happy to have that conversation too. So when I was at university, a very long time ago, I bought a book called The Policeman's Beard is Half Constructed, and it was written by a computer program called Racter, and it was a series of poems written by Racter. And as you can see from this little sample, they had some coherence and they sort of were grammatical, and they were strangely poetic and sort of interestingly weird, a little bit surreal. And I think there is a straight line from Racter in 1984, and indeed from Eliza in 1960 something, through to ChatGPT and all the others today. So I've been fascinated by this AI thing for the longest time. I was a computer game designer and a technology journalist, and I've been running Articulate for 25 years. So this is sort of my area of interest. I am a geek. I'm also a writer, so I'm a little nervous that, AI is going to put me out of a job. I'm also CEO of a marketing agency, and I'm pretty sure an AI can put me out of that job quite easily. But when it comes to AI, I am coming at this from the perspective of being a people-first AI pragmatist. I'm excited about it. I want to use it where it's appropriate, but I don't want AI to drown out the humanity. I want us to be able to do better work for our clients, better work for ourselves using AI. As I said, I run Articulate Marketing. We do brand strategy, websites, copywriting, automation, and AI for B2B technology companies that help the world become a better place. We want to help people live happy, flourishing, sustainable, healthy lives, and we do that with these sorts of marketing activities. So there's some of my colleagues, and this is what we do. So I'm coming at it from that perspective, sort of 20-something years as a marketing person, and life as a total geek and AI enthusiast. In this talk, I'm going to cover 6 strategies that will help marketers, help people watching this, make better use of AI tools, coming from that perspective that I outlined earlier. And I want to spend most of the time on practical tips and tactics that we've used and discovered and enjoyed and explored to help you, right? So this is going to be, I hope, helpful. And in that sense, these first 2 sections, getting found by AI search and creating original, compelling thought leadership content, are going to be the bulk of this talk. There is going to be some horizon scanning and a little bit of opinionating in there as we go as well. So that will hopefully give you some other things to think about and other strategies that you can apply with AI. So let's start with the question I get asked most of all at the moment. How do I get found by traffic from AI things? And I'm going to use the word AI and large language models and LLMs more or less interchangeably, but I mean things like Perplexity, Claude AI, OpenAI, ChatGPT, things like that. How do I get found by that? And I think that is a category error. I think that those tools do not do the thing that Google did, and the strategies that worked, or the thinking that worked for getting ranked on Google don't quite apply in the same way to AI tools. And I think what's interesting from this statistic from Ahrefs is that Reddit sends more referral traffic than all the AI tools. At least when they did this research earlier this year, and nobody is asking me for a Reddit search strategy. How do I get found on Reddit? Nobody wants to know that, but somehow everybody wants to know how they can get traffic from AI tools. So I think the understanding about this is quite important, though. It isn't about getting traffic, although there is possibility that you might get some, and if it comes, the data suggests that people who come from AI tools by clicking on sources are more interested, engaged, stay longer. The reality is people are looking to AIs, they're looking to Google AI overviews to just give them the answer to the question they're asking. So if your business relies on building a website that has answers to questions and getting people to come through Google to look at those questions, especially if you're not paying for it, that is a challenging place to be right now. Really interesting article in The Economist about this yesterday, which you should go look up. So the mission becomes, in an age where people are just looking for the answers, how do you get to, instead of being the blue link on Google, how do you get to be the source that the AI quotes when someone asks a question, right? It's almost how do you do PR to AIs. It doesn't mean that traditional search is going away. I'd never bet against Google. They have a huge scale and data investment. They have 5 trillion searches a year, and if some fraction of those searches are AI powered, okay, but that's still way more than they had 2 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. So Google's still out there, and I would say if you want to optimize to be found by AI, focus on Google AI overviews and less on ChatGPT and things like that. So how do you get found by, cited by, sourced by, referred to these AI things? I don't think even Google can tell you from inside the black box how it works. There is no explainable AI in these large language models. There isn't a way of sort of guaranteeing an input and guaranteeing an output. But there are some techniques that we think can help. The first one is ChatGPT relies on Microsoft Bing as its search tool. So if you are not findable on Bing, ChatGPT can't find you as a basic thing. So if you are, in any way interested in SEO, go make sure that your sitemap is uploaded to Bing Webmaster Tools. And if you've got Google Search Console set up and sitemaps uploaded to that, it literally is a few clicks. It will take you a very short time to get that set up. So that's a easy, quick, no regrets move for anyone who's got a website. Go get registered on Bing. Something that's going to take a little bit more work, but also relatively easy. If you've got content on your site, optimize it for crawlability. So you want to be using delivering informational content in AI summaries and AI responses does better than product-led or sort of hype-led content. And you need to be thinking about what people are searching for, asking about the questions they're asking. So high intent, long tail terms. And an interesting observation that I think is something we're absorbing at Articulate, because it's a big change for us, coming from Bain, from the management consultants, is if your best content is in the form of a PDF and it's behind a gated landing page, and Google can't spider it, AIs can't spider it, you're actually missing out on the best opportunity you've got to get cited by AI search. So take that PDF gated content, make it public. And then, and we've done this quite successfully, for example, this screenshot is from a guide to SEO that we have on our website. It's 7,500 words. You can just read it in the blog post. It's good, solid content. But we've added a form that says, if you want to get this as a PDF, so you can read it offline, you can read it on an e-reader, you can share it with your colleagues, fill in this form, we'll send you the PDF. So the value exchange is no longer fill in the form and you might get something interesting, but it's gated and you won't see it until you fill in the form. It's changed to, here is the thing you're getting, fill in the form and you get it in a particular format that is useful to you. So and this is one of our best converting offers on the site. So that could work quite well, and you then get the benefit of that thought leadership, that expert content, ungated. This may also be helpful for ordinary SEO as well, by the way. The next thing that I'm recommending as a tactic in this strategy for Get Found by AI search is to actually try to see the world through an AI search lens. Okay, so Google has an AI search grader that will give you a sense of how your organization is succeeding or not at being found by the various AI models. This tool and the screenshot comes from a tool that we use for SEO called Ahrefs, Ahrefs, and I'm sure Moz and SEMrush and the others have something similar. So they're beginning to give you some data. I read a report recently that Google Search Console is beginning to report on traffic links and visibility to some extent in AI overviews. So this data is becoming available. So what you need to do is use this insight to go and see how the AIs are seeing your content, and to see whether when you put in common questions, it's getting information from your competitors, or where it's getting information, or how it's kind of responding to those queries. So start sort of thinking like a user and using these tools to understand what kind of content you might need and what you need to be doing. Particularly, I think, because of the volume, Google's AI overviews, AIOs, and people also ask, are very interesting to sort of get some perspective about how you're being perceived and found by these tools. The trick perhaps here is then to see if you're not being cited, see who is, go see what content they've done, do better. So the next thing, in AI overviews, these two sites, Reddit and Quora, they're both sort of expert help discussion Q&A type forums, seem to do very well. A lot of citations are coming from these sites rather than from historically Wikipedia or high authority websites in search. And so it may be that you want to take some of your social media strategy or your outreach strategy or your PR work and divert it into these forums. And one of the reasons I think these forums do quite well, and Reddit's done a deal with some of the AIs, is that it is actually human beings asking questions and getting answers. So it's sort of a source of human intelligence insights. So if you're part of those conversations in your domains, you go to the Reddit that relates to, sustainability marketing, for example, and contribute quite heavily, that has a good thing. And by the way, those people who are in those kind of forums and discussions on these two platforms are interested in hearing from you anyway. And Rand Fishkin, his argument is you should go where your audience is, especially if you're not getting as much traffic now from sort of organic SEO. Go out and find your audience, go out and be out there, sort of beginning to come full circle to an old-fashioned PR kind of engagement. So consider being active on these, make some investment in these things. In any case, it will give you a real insight into what people are asking and what questions people have. The next thing is a reasonably well-tested, well-rehearsed strategy for being found on Google sort of featured snippets. So that, the little answer box at the top of a search before you get into sort of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blue links. But it's about making your content more easily machine readable. So putting in schema code, for example, the obvious one is recipes or job listings or FAQs or step-by-step guides. You have the human readable content, and then you put in a machine readable schema code. It just puts some extra context in there for the spiders. This is pretty much a no regrets move because it's helpful for traditional SEO anyway. You should be thinking about it and doing it. And we think that it has an influence on Google AI overviews and can't hurt. So that is another thing that, help the machines out a bit. And the last recommendation on the sort of tactics of getting found by AI search tools is this LLMS.text. I think they need to come up with a better name because it doesn't trip off the tongue, at least for me. This is a proposed evolving standard for surfacing information and content from your site in a way that is designed to be not just machine readable like schema code, but readable by the AIs. So it's using markup format, so it's relatively easy for human beings to write and edit. This is a snapshot of something that Anthropic have published. So they have published using this tool. There is a debate about whether any of the AIs are using it to scan information in, but it can't hurt to do this. It can't hurt to explore it. Firecrawl can help you build these. There are other tools that can help you. The .org site has the evolving specification. I would have thought this is half a day to a day for somebody with some sort of reasonable nerdiness about websites and knows how to write some markup text. So it's not rocket science. It doesn't need an engineer, but worth a try. So there are 6 things that you can go try in the next week or two to begin to influence and hopefully increase your citations and searches on the large language models. The biggest thing that you can do, and again, I think it's an obvious and a no regrets move, is create compelling, original thought leadership content. Okay, I would say this, I'm a writer, I run a marketing agency that does this, but I genuinely think that if you want to get found on these tools, if you want to get the word out, and indeed if you want to thrive in a world where everyone else is using AI, you use it to help you create this type of content. I think that's still going to be differentiating and supportive. So how do you create good content? So HubSpot's AI search guide, which you can go Google, has 4 recommendations. Conversational clarity. So write well and write in a way that is easy for the AIs to absorb. The good news is if you're using tools like Grammarly, if you're using metrics like Flesch Kincaid or Gunning Fog or something to measure readability, if you're writing well, if you're following the advice of the Norman Nielsen group, useit.com, about writing for the web, scannable, unhyped, itemized, bulletized, and so on. If you're using all of that good best practice writing for the web, you're already doing that. Second point, being authoritative and well cited, and this source on the right gives some very good evidence that if your content has very good links and good sourcing and appears credible, not only are you doing good for your readers and you're making your content more authoritative, but it actually has a higher chance of being picked up by the AIs. Next point, long form but structured. So short pieces of content, historically we've said with AI under 300-400 words. I think now you should be thinking about writing, 1,000 words and up on a particular topic. You want to have the definitive and authoritative long form answer, discussion, thought about a particular topic. If it's 2,000-3,000 words, fine. As long as it's not just filling up words for word count's sake, but because it's long form and it's authoritative, that I think is going to work. That also helps with traditional SEO, but you want to break it up with headings and subheadings and page structure. And lastly, align all of that with user intent. So that point I was making earlier about seeing what kinds of questions people are asking, looking at what your competitors are being, coming up in AI tools and so on. Understand what people are asking, and not just now keyword optimization, but what is the sentence and the paragraph that people are typing in, and do some imaginative persona work to align with user search intent. A lot of this is a slightly evolved version of something I've been saying for 20 years, and it's astonishing how little content out there does these things, even though it's good for readers, it's good for traditional SEO, and HubSpot and others recommend that it's good for being found on AI tools. So there you go. The flip side of it is, don't use the AI just to give you a lot of words. That is a shortcut, I think, to deep problems. I mean, you've always been able to do this to some extent in that you could outsource the copywriting to copy farms and pay pennies per word and have lots of words if it helps. And that didn't work very well. People who did it tend to be penalized by Google. Google are now saying in their quality raters assessment guide, if the rater can detect that the content has been largely written by AI, bin it off. It's going to be marked down. So you want to be thinking about the kinds of content that AI can't produce. So interviews and podcasts and webinars where you're actually presenting the human perspective and the human insight, original research, proprietary data, genuine original thought, genuine expert insight. This is stuff that AI still struggles to do because it's synthesizing and statistically correlating stuff that's already been said, right? If you bring something original and good and human to it, you are on the side of the angels. Okay. So I think if you are approaching creating content by saying, as I think we are trying to say at Articulate, it's human first, and you're going to spend the same amount of time doing it, how can AI help make that time more effective, make the content better, make the humans more good, help them save time without handing over the actual creative process to the AI or just outsourcing it altogether? Now, I know that there's a hype cycle and some people are saying, you know, forget about that. AI should be just doing everything. I don't think we're there yet. I'm not sure we're going to get there for reasons. But so we've been looking at some ways we can use AI to help empower human creators. One of them is using AI for the original research. So if you think about writing as being 100%, for me, 50% of good writing is researching and planning. And about 35% of good writing is editing. And actually all that's left is the little bit where you're typing into the screen the words that you need to put. And anyone who's a writer will understand that. Anyone who's not a writer will think writing is just the typey bit, right? It's just wordsmithing. It's just coming up with fancy sentences, but that's not the case. Planning, researching, and editing are critical parts of the writing process. And I think AI has a really powerful role to play here. So we've built this custom GPT, and we're experimenting with others where we have taken our expert knowledge, and one of my colleagues, Maddie, one of our senior strategists, has sort of embedded into this GPT what we know about the health tech sector and sources that we respect. So she's done quite a lot of research, she's done what she's good at, she's thought about it, and she's built this thing so that other writers in the company and potentially clients can come in here and go, here's a 40-page technical science medical report. Can you digest it and explain it to me? Here is a piece of content I'm writing. Can you suggest what gaps or whether I've been oversimplistic or whatever? I'm researching something about this. Can you give me some ideas about what potential pain points a customer for this company has in this sector that I need to address in this writing? That kind of thing. And you're bringing the human research and the human insight and the human judgment, and you're using AI to rapidly accelerate that research piece. Doesn't mean that you spend less time on it. It means that you have a little research assistant that's been trained and primed to help you. And often it will come up with new and interesting things that you might have missed on your own. So this research piece, I'm very excited about. On the back end of the writing process, we've also built a GPT called Twain, after Mark Twain, where we've uploaded for Articulate, our ideal client profiles, our target personas, our brand voice and messaging and tone of voice guidelines, and our business plan. And we can then ask it to review copy and content that we're writing for Articulate and give feedback and suggestions about the work. Now, again, this doesn't replace the pair editing that we do inside the agency with human beings, but it does actually make that self-editing and self-review, and the pair editing gives another tool. And here are the 3 recommendations it had about the email I sent out, recommendations after I sent it, inviting you all to come to watch this. And the recommendations are actually bang on. It's really interesting that it was able to do that, and very impressive. So there is an example of it in action with something that you've all seen. Okay, so I'm going to accelerate now through the rest of this. We're more than halfway through it, but those 2 sections were, I think, the ones that were most full of interesting, relevant content. So that's why I wanted to dwell there. Okay, so we've discovered a few things that can help improve our team's productivity that I want to share with you. The first one is HubSpot which is the software we use for marketing, marketing automation, CRM, and so on, has a connector that allows all the data inside your HubSpot portal to be surfaced to ChatGPT. You have to have a paid corporate ChatGPT account, and you have to connect all this up, and you need to use deep research. But you can then ask ChatGPT to do deep research into your HubSpot portal. For example, what are our best converting offers for marketing leaders, and why? And it will come back with a report based on actual data from your portal. Again, doesn't replace human insight, curiosity, but it does bring fresh perspectives. It does bring new insights, some serendipity. And for the sake of, I mean, it would take 10, 20 minutes to run a deep report like that. For the sake of spending a few minutes doing that and then reviewing the outcome, it could save or it could unlock new insights. So the same amount of research time could be spent in a more productive, fruitful direction. And also some of that data analysis, data science stuff can be a bit grindy, and having ChatGPT do it for you, fantastic. Okay, next area that's been brilliant for us. We're always a remote working agency. We have been for more than 20 years, long before it was fashionable. And one of the things that happens when we're doing a video conference with a client or in a sales context is we are also taking a lot of notes. And it's quite hard to be human and present and engaged if you're also looking over here typing the whole time. And so we've tried to solve that in various ways by having two people on every call. One is a note taker and one is talker, and so on. These tools, Notion AI meeting tool, Fathom, and Granola for live meetings, have really, in the last 6 months or so, become good enough that we can just use them, which means in a meeting I can be much more present for the people I'm talking to, confident that I'm getting a good aid memoir out of it at the end. It's really, I think, liberating for us. Another thing that I've been fascinated by in the last, recently, is this new tool in HubSpot where you can use an AI prompt to populate structured data in the CRM database. So for example, you can write a query that goes and looks at, you can select a whole bunch of companies in the database. It goes to look at each of their websites to decide whether or not they're in an ideal client profile for Articulate. Are they a health tech or a sustainability environmental tech company, for example? And it's surprisingly accurate, it's surprisingly efficient, and it's the sort of work that you might have a BDR spend a couple of days doing for hundreds of target companies, and it will sit there and run. I mean, it takes a little while to run, but you don't have to, once you've set it up, it just goes and does it. And you can use this for all kinds of things, queries inside the database, using AI to generate structured data, really time-saving, efficient, and very powerful. Last productivity tool I'm going to mention is we're using Riverside FM for this webinar. We use it now for a couple of podcasts that we run and that I host for some of our clients. Getting the transcripts out, getting the ability to edit the podcast by deleting words and editing the text, incredibly powerful. I hated using Adobe Premiere. I'm not a visual edity person, and I'm very good at editing text, so this is powerful for me. It generates social clips automatically, so the post-production work is almost entirely automated by AI, and I get to do what I enjoy doing and where I can add unique value and be a human being, which is preparing hopefully interesting things to say, presenting it, having interviews, talking to people, and exploring their expertise, knowing that I don't have to spend another half day editing and producing social clips afterwards. So amazingly powerful, Riverside FM, but the other tools have this kind of functionality too. So as we're moving and accelerating towards the close of this talk, I think it's very helpful to reflect and remind ourselves on some of the limitations of AI. We're very good at, human beings, of kind of imbuing AI and other things in life, by the way, with sort of more intelligence, more narrative, more story, more intentionality than they really have. And fundamentally, we are engaging with an AI tool. It is a statistical probability tool that tries to predict what the next word is. Right, so it's a stochastic parrot, and our cognitive bias imbues it with more intelligence. There are other risks that I've talked about over the last couple of years, and they should be self-evident to anyone who's thinking about it. But a couple of things have come up quite recently where, for example, an American court has said OpenAI needs to keep a record of every single query, regardless of whether it was temporary or deleted, in case it's required for legal discovery. So if you typed anything into ChatGPT, it might be accessible to a court, and OpenAI has to keep it. Right, so that that might not be what you were expecting from that, and that may change. That judgment may evolve, but there's a lot going on. And I think also I've been looking at Grok and the stories about that recently, and how extraordinarily easy it is to imbue these things with very distasteful characteristics. And that sort of proprietorship could influence how these things are going. Now, Grok is sort of obvious and hits the news, but how do you know somebody who is running one of these organizations isn't driving an agenda with their AI in a subtler way that isn't so offensive? So there are other things. I think the biggest human risk is that it reduces our ability to do critical thinking. And I run a podcast for a client about open source intelligence. And so I talk to a lot of intelligence analysts who do a lot of critical thinking. And it's been a real eye-opener for me about how important that critical thinking is, and source criticism, and using judgment, and kind of not taking at face value every single thing that an AI says, but using it effectively to accelerate your work. Anyway, so think about the risks. And as you do that, and as you navigate the challenges that are coming up, I don't think it's possible anymore to put off the practical implications of that. You are going to need an AI policy. You are going to need to train users. You are going to need careful technical, legal, and HR oversight. And you're going to need to keep monitoring and updating that quite rapidly as the technology evolves. This isn't just something you can leave to users, to goodwill, to hope, to assume that it's all going to be fine. It's becoming important enough that you can't ignore the work around the work, as it were. We have an AI policy, which I think in due course we're going to make more public, and perhaps make available for people as a starting point for their own. It's a much longer than these 5 points, but these 5 points are at the heart of it. And I think if you're running a department, or you're running a business, you need to articulate, pun not intended, very clear directions and principles about how you expect AI to be used in your organization. You might not follow what we've done. I kind of hope you do, because I kind of like a people first approach to this. But you've got to be very clear about what you're doing to people. You've got to help people understand what your intentions are for AI in your business, in your department, in your marketing. And if there are marketers and writers listening to this, and I know a lot of you have signed up, this tool, Grammarly Authorship, is one way in which you can prove that you produced some work yourself rather than relying on AI for it. It's an interesting, almost a reverse Turing test. It's like, no, I really am human. I just share this because I know that there's quite a lot of writers listening into this webinar. Okay. So I presented 2 years ago my first webinar about AI and marketing, and I think quite a lot has happened since then. I mean, the tools and technology has got better. I think the deep research functionality is fascinating, and related to that is quote reasoning. I think also we're beginning to see tools now that have some memory, like ChatGPT knows I have 2 Labradors, among other things about me. Now, what if it knew all my shopping? What if it knew all my web searches? What if it knew kind of where I went to school? What if it had more biographical information? What if it knew about my relationships? Maybe if it was parsing and connecting into social media. Now, that's kind of scary in some ways, but also incredibly powerful, because it could give you very tailored, very useful, relevant support if you trusted it and let it. So I think as we look ahead 2 years, this memory thing is going to be a really, really big evolution in AI, and I think look for that, both pros and cons. I also think that privacy and being able to run these tools locally in a walled garden is going to become important. I think for some users, I don't think it's going to become mass market unless Apple get their act together on this, which please, I hope they do. But I think being able to do that, and I can imagine people, and it's something I'm experimenting with now, running a little local LLM that they can ask questions, or they can put private information and know that that's just in a walled garden. It's not being shared with, DeepSeek or OpenAI or Grok or whatever. It's just your little AI using an open source AI tool on your computer, right? I think that's going to be interesting. And I think if I had to pick one other prediction for the next 2 years, somebody once said, never make predictions, especially about the future. So I could be wrong about all of this, but I think the other big theme is going to be enshittification, and this is the word of the year. What it means is, they're basically giving this stuff away now, and they'll start charging for it in interesting and different ways. If you're not paying for it, you're the product, right? So I think seeing how that evolves, seeing how Google makes money out on advertising out of AI overviews, I don't think they've got to that point yet. They're still at the phase of let's give it away, get lots of people hooked on it, and then we'll figure out how to make money. Next 2 years, somebody's going to figure this out, and it's going to get pretty nasty. Okay, that's my opinion, right? There are other things I worry about with AI and, China invasion of Taiwan and no chips and things, but they're probably more edge cases and hopefully don't happen. So thank you for your patience if you're still with us. I know I've overrun with enthusiasm for a few minutes at the end here. My last slide is, as a next step, learn more, take this on, keep exploring, don't be afraid of AI, embrace it pragmatically, experiment enthusiastically yourself. I think the AI tools that you can build for yourself are far more valuable than the ones that you don't know how they're working or where they're coming from. So experiment with your own custom GPTs, for example. It's a fast-moving topic, so just think of what you want to do and just see if you can find an AI tool that solves that problem for you. Pick your fights, pick your goals, and then find the AI tool that helps support you, and not just do it because everyone else says, this is the latest, greatest. For marketers, and there are a lot of them on this webinar, and a lot of them signed up for this, I think the Marketing AI Institute is a really interesting place. They've got lots of resources, lots of courses, lots of stuff that you can go. If there's a hype cycle from massive AI skeptics at one end, pragmatic human first AI people in the middle like me, Marketing AI Institute is sort of over to the right. It's not quite we're all going to be replaced by AIs and mass robot uprising, but it's sort of heading in that direction. So it's up on the hype cycle. So the antidote to that is read the AI Con and think about some of the politics, some of the economics, some of the business incentives, cui bono of AI. It's kind of interesting, and I think get some balance into this. Okay, so that's my bit of op-ed at the end. There's my email address again, Matthew@Articulate Marketing. Do get in touch. Love to hear from you. Sorry we can't chat live on this and I can't take questions. There are good reasons for it, which I'll get into if you buy me a beer one day. And thank you very much for joining me today. We're at the end of this, so I'll close it there. Thank you and goodbye.